Hi everyone, Morgan Hibbs here with Linn County Farm Bureau. I'm so excited to be back with you for another virtual Ag in the Classroom lesson. Today we are going to look at specialty crops, focusing on one we grow here in Iowa, apples, but we are also going to look at some citrus fruit today. So to begin today's lesson, I would like you to pause this video if you have not already watched the video called The Tree That Grows 40 Different Kinds of Fruit. And if you have watched that, you can resume play, but go ahead, watch that video. It's just a nice attention getter to introduce this idea, this technique that we will be looking at today called grafting. And it's a really cool video showing how amazing one tree is. And with this grafting technique, it can grow 40 different kinds of fruit. Once you've watched that, you can come back and we have a read aloud story. This is called My Family's Apple Farm Book, and this is about a family here in Iowa that grows apple trees. Read this story provided with the link, or watch the read aloud video. I'm going to just point out a few things in the story and then we'll continue on with our lesson. So this family grows apple trees. They grow traditional apple trees that are really tall, and apple trees can live multiple years. They can live for a long time. So these apple trees can get really large. Unlike corn and soybeans that are just a one-year crop, apple trees, we can produce apples year after year. If you notice that these apple trees, we have to harvest them with a ladder because they are really tall. And we use this basket to help hold the apples as we harvest them. There are different types of varieties of apples, which is just a different kind of apple. So there are red apples, green apples, yellow apples, pink apples. Once they harvest the apples, they take them in and they sort the good apples from the bad apples. They bag them up, and then they sell them at their stand. You'll notice that here are some red apples and here are some green. And just to show you how they wash them, this family puts them in a big tank here and washes them with the hose. Okay, so that was just one family here in Iowa, but there are all different sizes of orchards and different sizes of farms all across the United States growing fruit. So that was about apples. Now there's two videos you can watch. There is a how does it grow apples, so you can look at another type of orchard, which is a little bit of a larger orchard, and look at how they grow apples. Notice the difference between the tree size, how large these trees were compared to in the story, maybe how short they are. They use a technique called grafting. There's also another video that you can choose to watch that's called Florida Tangerines, and they grow tangerines in southern United States and Florida, and they also use this grafting technique. So what is grafting? Well, grafting is when you take a rootstock, so think about a plant, so we have the root, we have the stem, we have the branches and the leaves, and all of those things together help to produce the fruit. But some trees are so tall, and also some trees can be susceptible to diseases or pests, like insects. And farmers are looking at different ways to help protect the crop and grow more apples or more tangerines or other types of fruit. So you have this sheet in your kit or on our website, and it says, why aren't apple trees grown from seed? And now some apple trees are grown from seed, but many are not, and they are grafted. Grafting is when a shoot or a bud of one tree is inserted into the join of a stem or branch or root of another tree so that the two grow together. So for example, you would take a root stock with all of the roots, and one that would be maybe drought tolerant, so this summer we didn't get a lot of rain, maybe it would be a shorter variety, so it's not going to grow as tall. There's different roots that you would choose from, the rootstock. So you would start with one rootstock. Then you would choose a scion. A scion is the part of the plant, the stem and the leaves, that will actually produce the fruit that you're looking to grow. And so what you do is you take the rootstock and the scion and you put them together and help them grow into one new tree with this technique called grafting. So you'll notice here in this picture, we have the rootstock, the scion, and we do a technique called grafting where we try to put the two new tissues together, kind of like a wrapping it up like a band-aid so that the new tissues can grow into one new tree. So this is similar to like if you fall and get a scratch or you start to bleed and you scab over, and then pretty soon new skin starts to form over it and it's healed. This would be similar. So we are cutting the bottom tree, the rootstock, inserting a new scion into it, and pretty soon they seal up together and become one. Apples today are not the same as the native crab apples that were produced 100 years ago. Apples have been selectively bred to produce the varieties we know today. So originally we had the crab apple, and that was the only variety pretty much of apples. Now if you go to the grocery store, you have a whole section of apples to choose from. We saw that in our story here. When we look at the stand, look at how many different kinds of apples they're growing here on just this one orchard. And that's just here in Iowa. There are different orchards all over the United States that are producing their own varieties of apples, some that grow better in different climates. Apples have been selectively bred to produce the varieties that we know today. Apple breeders plant apple trees from seed only to find and develop new traits. So you can still grow apples from seeds, but oftentimes a farmer will choose to graft the trees for different reasons. One of the reasons is because it grows quicker. Imagine how long it takes to produce apples on a giant apple tree. Another reason is because you can have diseases and different pests that bother the trees, and if you choose a rootstock that is resistant to those, it can produce more apples. And the apples we eat were grown on farms from trees propagated by grafting. So many of the apples that we eat today that you find at the grocery store were grafted. Okay, so once you've watched the videos, it will explain a little bit more about grafting. But in your kit you have an activity sheet. The activity sheet looks at grafting a little bit more in depth. So grafting is when a shoot or a bud of one tree is inserted into or joined to the stem, branch, or root of another tree so that the two grow together. The reasons why you might graft is to grow certain varieties of fruit, obtain a shorter tree, and protect against diseases and pests, and increase or speed up production. So instead of waiting for a small seed to grow, you already have a tree that is going to be larger when you plant it to start producing apples sooner. How you do it is you cut the rootstock from one tree, so you want the desired rootstock. You cut the scion and then you insert it into the rootstock. Then you wrap it up and soon they will heal together and become one. Okay, so there's a couple questions to review. Could you use grafting to create one apple tree with multiple varieties of apples, maybe green, yellow, and red? Think back to that video of the tree producing 40 different fruits. Is the rootstock the bottom or the top of the graft? Is the scion the bottom or the top of the graft? So first we have the rootstock. Is that the top or the bottom? And then do you think the scion is the top or the bottom? What is one thing you learned about growing fruit from the story or video? Okay, so review those as a class. And then, lastly, you can work on your craft. So here on the back of that activity sheet, there is different pieces to cut out and glue onto a construction piece of paper, creating your own graft. So we have the rootstock, the scion, which is the top of the tree. And then we have the graft wrap that's going to help heal the two together. And we also have the fruit that is going to be produced. So, based off of one of the questions, here is mine. I drew a tree that has a red, yellow, and green apple being produced. Now, most farmers, even though you can produce trees that have multiple different fruits on them, it's not very productive because you're going to harvest them differently. Tangerines are harvested different times a year than apples. The growing seasons are different in the length of the growing seasons. What they need, how much water they need will be different. And then also what you're going to use them for. We eat apples differently than we eat tangerines. Apples might be made into apple juice, apple pie, things like that. So when it's going to the factory, it wouldn't make sense to have to separate like tangerines from apples. So even though we can do this, farmers don't usually do multiple unless you're watching the video that produces 40 different fruits, and that's just an experiment. But we do use grafting as a way to help increase apple production or a specific type of fruit production, to help with diseases and pests, create a shorter variety so that we don't have to climb so high to get the fruit, and then also to speed up production, and so then that way it doesn't take as long for the trees to grow. Okay, so with that grafting craft, the instructions say to cut out the root, stock, scion, and wrap, glue the pieces to the construction piece of paper, and then create a vision of your grafted tree. It doesn't have to be a realistic grafting tree, but you can do a fictional or non-fictional tree. Totally up to you. And then lastly, cut out the words and label your tree. Just for fun, I've included some dried fruit in your kit, so you can try some dried fruit that came from probably a grafting tree. Okay, and if you have any questions about this process, you can email me or ask your teacher, and we'd be happy to answer your questions. This was just one fun way to look at how plants might grow differently. So we have learned that plants grow by seed, and they do. But there's also other ways that we can grow fruit that might increase the production of that fruit tree. Thank you everyone for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.